Hey everyone, welcome back. I hope you've been having a good week and recovering from that random bout of snow that we got the other day. I know I'm trying to. We are starting a new series this week on spiritual practices. And you might be wondering, what is a spiritual practice? And if you've heard of a spiritual practice, you might be thinking of things like journaling, or reading your Bible, or praying, or doing a prayer labyrinth. And all of those things can be spiritual practices. But the important thing to remember is that a spiritual practice is anything that A, helps you see the world differently, B, causes you to feel God's presence, or C, causes you to feel as if time has stopped or has sped up. Another way to understand it is the difference between, I'm going to throw some Greek words at you, but I'll explain them, I promise. The difference between chronos time and kairos time. So chronos time is the time that we count by looking at a clock. This is where the word chronological comes from. Whereas kairos time is when time seems to change. Either the clock stops or the time goes by very quickly. Kairos time is considered God time. It's time that's outside of the chronos of everyday life. So spiritual practices are things that help us experience kairos time or God time. I'm going to give you two examples from my life. The first one I thought of is I love to read. This is a book I read recently, Parable of the Sower. Super good, you should read it. So I started reading this book at like 8 p.m. on a Tuesday night, and I stayed up all night until 4 in the morning to finish the book, just because I was so lost in it. It was so good. So reading is something that makes me feel like time has stopped or has slowed down. It's also something that helps me see the world differently, because I read these books and I'm putting myself in the shoes of the characters whose lives are different from my own. So in my own life, I see other people's stories differently because I'm reading about other people's stories a lot. So I consider reading something that gives me kairos time, because it gives me those two things. It helps me see the world differently, and it makes me feel like I've stepped out of everyday time. Another thing I love to do is I love to run. So when I'm in good shape, which I'm not in great shape right now, so I haven't run in a while. But when I am in good shape, I love to just go on long, slow, steady runs. So I'll run at like a super slow pace for like an hour and a half, and there's nothing that feels better to me than that, because I just get to get lost in my own thoughts for an hour and a half. I get to just feel powerful and strong and fast. It makes me feel like I can do anything. Like I'm connected to God, God is with me, and I don't have to be afraid of anything. It makes me feel more capable and more hopeful about the world. So what running does for me is it makes me feel connected to God and to myself. So these are my two spiritual practices, and you can have as many spiritual practices in your life as you want. These are just two examples of mine that feel the most dominant. So I want to know from you guys, what are the things that help you see the world differently? What are the things that make you feel connected to God or yourself? What are the things that make you feel like time has stopped or has sped up? Because those are the things that are your spiritual practices. And that could be playing basketball, or it could be writing poetry, or drawing something, or knitting, or baking. And it could be reading your Bible, it could be journaling, it could be prayer. All of these things are valid spiritual practices. So over the next few weeks, we're going to explore some different potential spiritual practices that you could take on in your life. One thing I want you to take home with you tonight is pay attention this week to moments when time seems to slip away or when time seems to slow. Pay attention for times when your view of the world or your attitudes towards it might change somehow, because these might be clues to finding the spiritual practices for you.